The boy selling white roses. Roman Valenti had been officially dead for 5 years when he saw his son for the first time. It happened on a cold December afternoon outside one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. Snow clung to the edges of the sidewalk. Black cars waited beneath the stone awning. Wealthy guests moved through the glass doors, wearing fur coats, polished shoes, and the careless expressions of people who had never counted coins before buying dinner. Roman stepped from a black SUV and surveyed the street. He wore a charcoal coat over a black shirt. A pale scar crossed the edge of his jaw. Another disappeared beneath his collar. 5 years away from Boston had changed him. His body had become harder. His eyes had become colder. Even the men who had once served beside him now watched him as if he were something that had climbed out of a grave. Gabriel Russo, the only soldier Roman still trusted, moved beside him. The restaurant is secure. Enzo is expected in 20 minutes. Roman gave a slight nod. After 5 years of living under false names, moving between hidden apartments, cargo ships, abandoned villas, and underground safe houses, Roman had returned for one reason. He was going to kill the man who had destroyed his family. He did not yet know that his family was standing less than 30 feet away. A small boy moved between the restaurant guests with a wicker basket pressed against his chest. White roses filled the basket. He could not have been older than 5. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his cheeks were pink from the cold. His coat was too thin for the weather. One sleeve had been carefully repaired with blue thread. "Would you like a flower for someone you love?" Most guests passed without looking at him. The boy kept smiling. "1 rose is $3. 2 or 5. A woman in a silver coat pushed past him. The basket tilted, and several roses fell onto the wet pavement. The boy quickly knelt to retrieve them. Roman stopped walking. Something about the child disturbed him. It was not the flowers. It was not the worn coat or the stubborn way the boy hid his disappointment. It was the way he lifted his face after gathering the roses. His eyes were dark gray, the exact color of Roman's eyes. The boy noticed Roman staring and approached him without fear. "Would you like a rose?" Sir Roman had faced armed men without feeling his pulse change. He had walked through gunfire with blood running down his side. He had ordered executions while men twice his age begged at his feet. But the voice of that child made his chest tighten. Roman looked down at the basket. "Who are you selling them for?" "My mother owns a flower shop. Some flowers do not sell before they start looking tired. I sell them so we can buy dinner instead of throwing them away." There was no shame in the boy's voice, only determination. Roman studied his face more closely. "What is your name, Noah Miller?" The surname struck him first. Then the restaurant door opened behind them. A drunken man stumbled outside with 2 friends. He walked directly into Noah and knocked the basket from his hands. Roses scattered across the sidewalk. "Watch where you are going," the man snapped. Noah stared at the ruined flowers. The man tried to move past him, but Noah caught the edge of his coat. "You damaged them." The man looked down in disbelief. "Move your hand. They belong to my mother." The man grabbed Noah by the wrist. Roman moved before Gabriel could stop him. 1 second. The stranger was holding the boy. The next. Roman had twisted the man's arm behind his back and forced him against the hood of a parked car. The man cried out. Roman's voice remained quiet. "Touch him again, and you will never use this hand." The 2 friends stepped forward, then froze when Gabriel and 4 armed bodyguards surrounded them. The drunken man looked at Roman's face. Recognition slowly replaced anger. Roman Valenti. The name escaped him like a prayer spoken before death. The sidewalk fell silent. Roman released him. "Leave." The 3 men hurried away without looking back. Noah stood among the fallen flowers, staring at Roman with wide eyes. Roman crouched in front of him. "Did he hurt you?" Noah shook his head. Roman reached for his wrist. The boy turned slightly. causing the collar of his coat to shift. Behind his left ear was a small, dark birthmark shaped like a broken crescent. Roman stopped breathing. His father had carried the same mark. Roman had it beneath his own left shoulder. The Valenti birthmark had appeared in the firstborn son of every generation for more than a century. Roman stared at the child. A cold sensation moved through his body, deeper than fear and sharper than any blade. Noah bent to pick up his basket. Something slipped from inside his coat and landed near Roman's shoe. It was a photograph. The edges were worn from being touched too many times. Roman picked it up. The world around him disappeared. Grace Miller stood in a tiny candlelit chapel, wearing a simple ivory dress. Her soft brown hair rested over her shoulders. Her curvy body was pressed against Roman's side. She was smiling at him with the kind of love Roman had believed no man like him deserved. Roman remembered the exact moment. It had been their wedding night. 4 days before he vanished from her life, the photograph shook between his fingers. "Where did you get this?" Noah looked at it. "That is my mother." Roman could barely force the next question from his throat. "Who is the man beside her?" Noah glanced at the photograph, then back at Roman. "I do not know. My mother never tells me his name." Roman's eyes burned. "Why do you carry it? Sometimes she looks at it when she thinks I am sleeping. She cries afterward. I thought the man might be my father. So I took it." Roman felt something inside him break. Gabriel stared at the boy. Then, at Roman. "Boss." Roman did not answer. Across the street, a dark sedan pulled away from the curb. Roman noticed the camera lens disappearing behind the rear window. His grief vanished beneath instinct. Someone had been watching. He grabbed Noah and pulled him against his chest. A gunshot shattered the restaurant window. Guests screamed. Roman turned his body, shielding Noah as another bullet struck the stone wall behind them. Gabriel drew his weapon. "Get the car here." Roman lifted Noah into his arms. The child clung to his coat as bodyguards formed a wall around them. Roman ran toward the armored SUV, while glass fell across the sidewalk. Another shot struck the vehicle. Roman placed Noah inside, climbed after him, and slammed the door. The convoy moved before the gunfire stopped. Noah stared at Roman. His small chest rose and fell quickly, but he was not crying. "My mother will be looking for me." Roman still held the photograph. For 5 years, he had believed Grace was living under a protected identity in Oregon. For 5 years, reports had arrived every month claiming she and the baby were safe, financially secure, and beyond the reach of his enemies. Yet his son had been standing in the Boston cold, selling dying flowers for dinner. Roman looked at the worn sleeve of Noah's coat. Then he looked at the birthmark behind his ear. A dangerous stillness settled over him. "Tell me where your mother is." The dead man at her door, Grace Miller, knew something was wrong when Noah was 20 minutes late. Her flower shop stood between a laundromat and a bakery in a quiet neighborhood near South Boston. The sign above the window had once read "Graceful Blooms," but several letters had faded from years of rain and snow. Inside, the shop smelled of pine, roses, and damp earth. Grace stood behind the counter, wrapping a bouquet for a customer while repeatedly glancing at the clock. She wore a green sweater and a long cream skirt. Her brown hair was gathered in a loose knot. Time had changed the softness in her face, but it had not taken away her beauty. She had become fuller after the pregnancy, stronger in ways that could not be seen, and more careful with her heart. Noah always returned before sunset. He knew the rules. Stay near the restaurant. Do not enter a stranger's car. Call from the bakery if there is trouble. At 5 minutes late, Grace felt concerned. At 10 minutes, she called the restaurant. At 15 minutes, she put on her coat. At 20 minutes, 3 black SUVs stopped outside the flower shop. Grace froze. The customer looked through the window. Are you expecting someone? Grace did not answer. Men in dark suits stepped from the vehicles. She knew what powerful men look like when they arrive to deliver bad news. She had seen them 5 years earlier. Those men had come to her apartment after Roman disappeared. They had searched the rooms, removed documents, and told her that asking questions would put her life in danger. Grace reached beneath the counter and closed her fingers around a pair of florist shears. The door opened. A tall man entered carrying Noah. Grace rushed forward. Noah. Her son reached for her. Mom. Roman placed him on the floor. Grace pulled Noah against her body, examining his face and wrists. Are you hurt? What happened? Where were you? There were gunshots. Noah said. The man protected me. Grace slowly lifted her head. For several seconds, she saw only the outline of the stranger. The broad shoulders, the dark coat, the controlled posture. Then he stepped into the warm light of the shop. The florist's shears slipped from Grace's hand. Roman. He lipped her lips without sound. He looked older, harder. The warmth she remembered had been buried beneath scars and silence. But it was him. The man she had loved. The man she had married in secret. The man she had mourned until grief turned into anger. Roman moved one step closer. Grace. She struck him across the face. The sound echoed through the shop. Every bodyguard outside went still. Roman did not react. Grace struck him again. This time her palm trembled afterward. You are dead. Roman's cheek reddened, but his voice remained steady. I know what you were told. You are dead. Grace backed away from him, as if the distance could make him disappear again. She grabbed Noah and moved him behind her. Do not come near my son. Roman looked at the child. Our son. Grace's expression changed. It was not shock. It was rage. You do not get to say that word. His jaw tightened. Grace, there are armed men searching for him. There were armed men searching for me when I was pregnant. You were not there. I left because staying would have killed you. You do not get to turn abandonment into sacrifice. Roman absorbed the accusation without defending himself. Grace had imagined this moment thousands of times. In some versions, Roman walked through the door and begged forgiveness. In others, she screamed until her voice disappeared. On the worst nights, she imagined falling into his arms because loving him had once felt easier than breathing. But now Noah stood behind her. She could not be the woman she had been. Grace placed one hand over the boy's shoulder. You have 5 minutes to tell me why my son was involved in a shooting. Roman turned to Gabriel. Lock the door. Check the rear alley. Gabriel directed the guards without question. Grace noticed the weapons beneath their coats. Noah held tighter to her skirt. Roman lowered his voice. Someone photographed me speaking with Noah. Seconds later, a sniper opened fire. Why would anyone care about a flower seller? Because they saw his face. Grace stared at him. Roman reached into his coat and placed the wedding photograph on the counter. He has my eyes. He has the birthmark of my family. Anyone familiar with the Valenti bloodline will know what he is. Noah looked between them. Are you my father? Grace closed her eyes. Roman seemed unable to speak. The feared man who had once controlled half of the ports on the eastern coast looked terrified of answering a 5-year-old boy. Finally, he crouched in front of Noah. Yes. Noah studied him. Why were you dead? Grace turned away. Roman's voice became rough. Because I made choices that I thought would protect your mother. Did they? Roman looked at Grace. No. That single word carried more honesty than any explanation could have. A vehicle stopped in the alley behind the shop. Roman's head turned immediately. Gabriel entered from the back room. 2 men are approaching the rear door. The lights went out. Grace pulled Noah against her. Roman crossed the distance between them and pushed them behind the stone counter. "Stay down." The rear door exploded inward. Two armed men entered. Roman fired before either could aim. The first man collapsed near the shelves. The second shot into the dark shop. Glass vases shattered. Roman moved through the shadows with terrifying precision. He caught the attacker at the wrist, drove him against the wall, and forced the weapon from his hand. The man tried to reach for a knife. Roman struck him once. The attacker fell and did not move again. Silence returned. Grace covered Noah's ears and held his face against her chest. Roman stood among broken flowers and shattered glass. His weapon lowered at his side. He looked like the man Boston had once feared. Then he saw Grace trembling. Something in his face changed. He returned the weapon beneath his coat before approaching them. "Grace, we need to leave. This is my shop. They know where you live. This is everything I have." Roman looked around the small business. The worn counter, the leaking ceiling, the second-hand refrigerator, the box where Grace kept unpaid utility notices. His face became colder with every detail. "I sent enough money to support you for the rest of your life." Grace stared at him. "You sent nothing." Roman did not move. "Not $1. She continued. "Not one message. Not one explanation. I delivered Noah alone. I worked until the night before he was born. I came back to this shop when he was 3 weeks old because rent did not care that I could barely stand." Roman looked toward Gabriel. The report said she received every payment. Gabriel's expression darkened. Then the reports were false. Grace laughed bitterly. "Of course they were. In your world, everything is false." Roman picked up Noah's damaged basket. He gathered one of the white roses from the floor and placed it carefully inside. Then he looked at Grace. "You may hate me when you are safe." She lifted her chin. "You do not give me orders anymore." "No. But I will not stand here and allow the two of you to become targets because of my name." Grace stepped closer until only inches separated them. "You made me carry that name alone for 5 years." Roman's control nearly broke. His hand lifted as if he wanted to touch her face. He stopped before his fingers reached her. Grace saw the hesitation. She remembered the same hand resting against her stomach on the night she told him about the baby. She remembered the fear in his eyes, followed by a promise that no harm would ever reach them. Then he had disappeared 4 days later. Grace turned away. She gathered Noah's coat and a small bag from beneath the counter. "Only until the danger is over." Roman watched her button Noah's coat. "The danger will not be over until Enzo Belandi is dead." Grace froze. Enzo had been Roman's most trusted underboss. He had also been the man who visited Grace after Roman vanished and told her that Roman regretted marrying her. Roman saw recognition in her face. "What did Enzo say to you?" Grace looked at him. "He said you chose your empire." Roman's eyes became almost black. Grace continued. "He said the marriage papers had never been filed. He said you wanted me to forget you before I became an embarrassment." Roman reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a chain. His wedding ring hung from it. "I filed the papers myself." Grace stared at the ring. Roman closed his hand around it. "Enzo lied to both of us." 5 years of silence. The Valenti estate stood beyond iron gates near the edge of the city. Grace remembered it as a cold mansion filled with men who lowered their voices when Roman entered a room. Now the property looked more like a fortress. Security cameras covered the walls. Armed guards patrolled the snow-covered grounds. Black SUVs blocked every entrance. Roman led Grace and Noah through the front doors. Noah stared at the marble staircase, the crystal chandelier, and the enormous painting above the fireplace. "Do you live here?" Roman removed his coat. "I did once." Noah looked toward the silent hallways. "It seems lonely." Roman glanced at Grace. "It was." Grace felt the answer more deeply than she wanted to. A housekeeper brought warm clothes and food for Noah. Roman ordered guards to remain outside the room instead of entering. He seemed to understand that the sight of armed strangers frightened his son. Grace noticed everything. Roman kept his distance from Noah even while watching every movement the child made. He did not reach for him again. He did not demand affection. He stood at the edge of the room like a man facing something sacred that he did not deserve to touch. Noah sat at the long dining table and ate tomato soup with bread. Roman remained near the window. "Are you not hungry?" Noah asked. Roman shook his head. "Mom says people become angry when they do not eat." Grace closed her eyes. "Noah." Roman almost smiled. "Your mother is correct." He sat across from the boy. A servant placed soup in front of him. Roman lifted the spoon, even though Grace could see he had no appetite. Noah watched him. "Did you know about me?" Roman placed the spoon down. "I knew your mother was pregnant." "Then why did you leave?" Grace expected Roman to avoid the question. Instead, he looked directly at the child. "Because a dangerous man learned that your mother was carrying my baby? I believed that if the world thought I was dead, he would stop searching for her." "Did he? For a time? Did you search for us every day?" Grace looked up sharply. Roman reached into the leather case Gabriel had brought into the dining room. He removed a stack of photographs. Grace saw herself leaving the flower shop. Another showed her pushing a stroller. Another showed Noah at 2 years old, asleep in her arms on a park bench. Grace stood so quickly that the chair scraped across the floor. "You watched us?" Roman shook his head. "These are not the reports I received." He spread documents across the table. "The photographs I received showed a woman with brown hair living in Oregon under your protected identity. Her face was never clear. The financial records showed that payments were delivered each month. Medical records stated that you gave birth to a healthy daughter." Grace stared at him. "A daughter," Roman nodded. "Enzo controlled the network that protected you. I believe direct contact would expose your location. Every report told me that you were safe." Grace picked up one document. Her hands trembled as she read the false name assigned to her. "Why did you trust him?" "Because he saved my life when I was 19. Because he stood beside my father. Because he was the closest thing I had to family." Grace placed the page down. "And that was enough for you to stay away for 5 years. Pain flashed across Roman's face. "No." He looked at Noah. "But every time I considered returning, another person connected to me was killed. My doctor, my driver, a lawyer who helped prepare your documents. Enzo sent photographs of their bodies with warnings that Grace would be next if Roman Valenti ever came back to life." Grace went silent. Roman continued, "I spent 5 years destroying the people who financed the war. I thought Enzo was helping me. 3 months ago, I discovered that every enemy location I attacked had already been emptied. Someone close to me was warning them." Gabriel opened a folder. "We traced the messages to Enzo." Roman looked at Grace. "He did not protect you. He kept you visible and desperate so you would remain in Boston. He knew that if I ever returned, I would eventually search for you." Grace looked toward Noah. Her son was listening with a seriousness no child should have needed. She reached for him. "Come with me. It is time for bed." Noah slipped from the chair. Before leaving, he looked back at Roman. "Do you have another family?" Roman's expression hardened with something close to grief. "No." "Another wife?" "No." "Why?" Roman looked at Grace. "Because I already had one." Grace led Noah upstairs without responding. Roman stood alone in the dining room. Later that night, Grace found Noah asleep in a bedroom larger than their entire apartment. A small lamp glowed beside the bed. Fresh clothes had been placed in the closet. His damaged basket rested on a chair. Someone had filled it with new white roses. Grace walked into the hallway. Roman stood at the far end near a window. Snow moved through the darkness outside. She approached him. "You should not have told him everything. He asked me the truth. He is 5. I know. No. You do not know. You did not wake up when he cried through the night. You did not sit beside him when he had a fever. You did not explain why other children had fathers at school, and he did not. Roman remained still. Every word struck him, but he did not defend himself. Grace lowered her voice. You do not get to enter his life as a hero because you stopped one bullet. I do not believe I'm a hero. Then what do you believe? Roman looked through the window. That I failed the only two people I ever loved. Grace's anger faltered. Roman turned toward her. I know hatred is the only thing you can safely give me. Give me all of it. I will take it. But do not ask me to pretend that seeing him did not change everything. You cannot claim him. I am not asking to claim him. His gaze held hers. I am asking for the chance to become worthy of him. Grace remembered the Roman she had married. He had never begged. Not for loyalty. Not for mercy. Not even for love. She stepped back. You should have come home. Roman's composure cracked. His voice dropped. I stood across the street from your flower shop once. Grace stared at him. It was 2 years ago. You were closing for the night. Noah was asleep against your shoulder. I crossed half the street before a car followed you from the corner. I thought Enzo's men had found you because of hoarding me. What happened? I killed them before they reached your apartment. Grace remembered that night. 2 men had followed her for several blocks, then suddenly disappeared. Roman continued. The next morning, Enzo sent me a photograph of you carrying Noah. He wrote that the next warning would arrive with blood. Grace's eyes filled. So you watched me walk away. Yes. You should have trusted me enough to let me choose the danger. Roman looked at her with quiet devastation. I know that now. The assassination at the flower market. For the next 4 days, the estate became a place of uneasy peace. Grace slept with Noah in the same room. Roman slept in the study downstairs. He rarely entered their space without permission. Each morning, he waited at the breakfast table before Noah arrived. Each evening, he stood outside the bedroom door until Grace allowed him inside to say goodnight. Noah began asking questions. Did Roman know how to ride a bicycle? Could Roman cook? Had Roman ever been afraid? Roman answered the first question with yes. He answered the second with no. He took longer with the third. Everyone is afraid of something. What are you afraid of? Roman looked at Grace. Arriving too late, Grace turned toward the window. She had spent years convincing herself that Roman had never truly loved her, believing that had helped her survive. Now every look between them threatened the walls she had built. Roman still remembered how she took her coffee. He knew she hated closed elevators. He ordered the kitchen to remove walnuts because she was allergic. When Grace became overwhelmed during a security meeting, Roman noticed before anyone else. He cleared the room without explaining why. Those details were more dangerous than his weapons. On the 5th morning, Grace demanded to return to her shop. Roman refused. She crossed her arms. The flowers will die. I will replace them. My customers are expecting wedding arrangements. I will compensate them. You cannot solve my life by purchasing it. Roman's face became cold. You were nearly killed there, and hiding in your mansion will not rebuild my business. Enzo's men are still searching for you. Then send guards. Roman stepped closer. You believe I will allow you to stand behind a glass window while a sniper waits across the street? Grace did not move. You do not allow me to do anything. The room fell silent. Roman realized his mistake. His hand tightened at his side. You are right. Grace had expected an argument. The immediate surrender unsettled her. Roman continued. But I am asking you not to go. I have spent 5 years allowing fear to decide my life. I spent 5 years trying to keep you alive, and neither of us succeeded. Roman looked away. Grace softened her voice. I need to see what remains. An hour later, Roman's convoy entered the city. Grace sat beside Noah in the armored SUV. Roman sat across from them, watching every passing vehicle. When they reached the flower shop, police tape still covered the rear entrance. The front window was broken. Bouquets lay wilted across the floor. Grace stepped inside, her face crumpled. Every holiday order had been destroyed. Noah walked toward his basket, which Roman had brought from the estate. "We can make more." Grace pulled him close. Roman stood behind them. He saw her fighting tears and wanted to touch her. His fingers moved, then stopped. Grace noticed. For one painful second, neither looked away. Then a delivery truck pulled up outside. Men began unloading roses, lilies, evergreen branches, vases, ribbons, and new refrigeration equipment. Grace turned toward Roman. "What did you do?" "I replaced what the bullets destroyed. I told you not to purchase my life. This is not your life. These are flowers. There are enough flowers for 10 shops." Roman examined the delivery. "I may have misunderstood the order sheet." Gabriel looked away to hide a smile. Grace almost laughed. The sound never fully escaped. But Roman saw it. His expression changed as though he had been given something precious. Grace noticed that too. She quickly turned away. By noon, the shop was alive again. Noah arranged small bouquets near the counter while Roman's guards repaired the rear door. Roman remained near the entrance, too dangerous and too elegant for the cheerful room. A woman entered to collect wedding centerpieces. She recognized him immediately. Her face went pale. "Roman Valenti is alive." Within an hour, the news had spread across Boston. By the afternoon, reporters gathered outside. Cameras pointed through the broken window. Headlines appeared online. The dead mafia king had returned. His secret wife had been discovered. A hidden child had been photographed leaving the Valenti estate. Grace's private pain became a public spectacle. One reporter shouted through the door, "Grace, did Roman Valenti force you to hide his son?" Another called out, "Were you paid to remain silent?" Roman's jaw tightened. Grace touched his arm before he could step outside. "Do not frighten them. They are accusing you. I have survived worse than questions." Roman looked down at her hand on his sleeve. Grace slowly removed it. Before either could speak, Noah called from the sidewalk, "Mom, look." He had slipped past a distracted guard and was standing beside a flower display outside. A woman in a red coat approached him. She bent as if admiring the roses. Roman saw the wire beneath her sleeve. He ran. The woman grabbed Noah. Roman reached them before she could pull the boy toward a waiting car. He tore Noah from her arms and shoved him toward Gabriel. The woman raised a weapon. Grace screamed. Roman struck her wrist aside as she fired. The bullet shattered the shop window. A second attacker stepped from the car. Roman pushed Grace behind a stone planter. "Stay down." The attacker fired again. Roman shielded Grace with his body. The bullet struck his shoulder. He barely reacted. Grace felt warm blood against her hands. "Roman." He rose and returned fire. The attacker collapsed beside the car. The woman tried to run. Gabriel stopped her at the alley. Reporters scattered while bodyguards surrounded the shop. Roman turned toward Noah. The child was safe in Gabriel's arms. Only then did Roman stagger. Grace caught him before he fell. Blood spread across his black coat. She pressed both hands against the wound. "You were shot." "It passed through." "You do not know that." Roman looked at her face. "Are you hurt?" Grace stared at him. "You are bleeding." "And you are asking about me?" He lifted one hand toward her cheek. His fingers stopped inches from her skin. Grace closed the distance herself. She pressed his palm against her face. Roman's breath changed. For one suspended moment, the gunfire, cameras, and screaming disappeared. Grace looked at him with tears in her eyes. You always stop before touching me. I do not know what I am allowed to want. The answer broke something inside her. Then Roman's knees weakened. Grace caught him. Bodyguards rushed forward. Roman remained conscious as they carried him toward the SUV. His eyes never left Grace. The wedding ring on his heart. The doctor removed the bullet fragments at the estate. The wound was not fatal. But Roman had lost enough blood to leave him pale and exhausted. Grace sat beside his bed after midnight. She told herself she remained because Noah had asked her to make sure Roman did not die again. That was only part of the truth. Roman opened his eyes. The room was dark, except for the lamp beside the bed. Grace sat in a chair with her arms folded. You should be sleeping, he said. You should stop getting shot. His mouth moved slightly. Was that almost a smile? No. Grace adjusted the blanket. The motion brought her close enough to smell soap, medicine, and the faint trace of smoke that always seemed to follow him. Roman watched her. Did Noah see much? Gabriel took him into the bakery before the shooting ended. Good. Grace looked at the bandage across his shoulder. You protected him without thinking. There was nothing to think about. That answer frightened her. She sat back. What happens if Enzo dies? The war ends. And then Roman remained quiet. Grace continued. Do you return to being the man you were? I cannot return to anything. That is not an answer. He looked at the ceiling. Before I met you, power was the only thing I trusted. Men obeyed because they feared me. Fear was reliable. Then you walked into my car carrying 6 buckets of flowers. Grace remembered. 5 years earlier. Roman's driver had stopped near her shop during a storm. Grace had mistaken his black sedan for the vehicle delivering flowers to a hotel. She had opened the rear door, placed several buckets beside Roman, and climbed in before realizing who he was. Any sensible woman would have apologized and left. Grace had looked at his expensive coat and ordered him to move his shoes away from the lilies. Roman had been fascinated from that moment. You looked offended, Grace said. You spilled water across my shoes. They were ugly shoes. They cost $4,000. That does not make them attractive. Roman finally smiled. It was small and tired, but real. Grace felt the old warmth between them. It terrified her more than the shooting. She stood. I should check on Noah. Roman caught her wrist. The touch was gentle. Grace looked down at his hand. Roman released her immediately. I am sorry. She remained beside the bed. Do you still love me? The question left her before she could stop it. Roman's face became unreadable. Grace regretted asking. Then he reached beneath his shirt and removed the chain, carrying his wedding ring. He placed it in her palm. The metal was warm from his skin. This never left my body. Grace closed her fingers around it. That was not what I asked. Roman sat upright despite the pain. There were nights when I had to choose which enemy building to enter. I kept your wedding photograph inside my vest because I believed that if death reached me, your face should be the last thing I saw. His voice became lower. I learned the roads around the house in Oregon, where I believed you lived. I knew the hours the woman left for work. I memorized the school that the child in the reports would attend. I destroyed every person who threatened that city. Grace's eyes filled. Roman continued. When I discovered the woman was not you, I returned to Boston to kill Enzo. Then I saw Noah holding your flowers. He looked at the ring in her hand. Love is not a sufficient word for what happened to me. Grace could not breathe. What word would you use? Roman's gaze held hers. Survival. The silence between them became intimate and unbearable. Grace leaned closer. Roman lifted his hand toward her face. Again. He stopped. This time, Grace did not close the distance. Why do you stop? Because the last time you trusted me, I destroyed your life. You did. I will not take anything else from you. Grace searched his eyes. Then she placed his wedding ring back around his neck. You should rest. She turned toward the door. Roman spoke behind her. Grace. She stopped. I never regretted marrying you. Not for 1 second. Grace left before he could see her cry. The following morning, she found Noah sitting on Roman's bed. Roman was teaching him how to shuffle playing cards with one hand because the other shoulder was injured. Noah dropped the cards across the blanket. Roman patiently gathered them. Grace remained in the doorway. She had never imagined Roman as a father. Yet he listened to every question Noah asked. He did not speak to him like a child who understood nothing. He explained danger without glorifying it. He apologized when he did not know how to answer. Noah held up a card. Is this one important? It is a king. Are you a king? Roman glanced at Grace. No. Gabriel calls you boss. That is different. Mom is the boss at our house. Roman nodded seriously. I already understood that. Noah laughed. Grace tried not to smile. A bodyguard entered. Boss. We found the source of the false reports. Roman's expression changed instantly. He stood despite the doctor's instructions. Where? A private records facility near the harbor. Enzo's men are destroying the files now. Roman looked at Grace. She understood that the brief peace had ended. He turned to Gabriel. Prepare the cars. Grace stepped into the room. You were shot yesterday. Roman reached for his coat. I have waited 5 years for those records. And if Enzo is waiting for you, then he has made his final mistake. Grace blocked the doorway. Roman looked down at her. Move. No. His eyes hardened. Grace. You said you would not take anything else from me. Dying again would be taking something. Roman went still. Noah watched them from the bed. Grace lowered her voice. Bring enough men. Wear the protective vest. Do not enter alone. Roman's expression softened. Is that an order? Yes. He nodded. Then I will obey. The truth beneath the harbor. The records facility was empty when Roman arrived. Rows of filing cabinets burned inside the warehouse. Smoke rolled across the ceiling. Computers had been smashed. Hard drives lay in containers filled with acid. Enzo had erased almost everything. Almost. Gabriel found a steel box hidden beneath the floor. Inside were bank records documenting every payment Roman had sent to Grace. Enzo had redirected the money through shell companies. There were photographs of Grace taken each week. Medical records from the hospital where Noah was born. Copies of letters Grace had written to Roman after his disappearance. Roman opened the first envelope. The paper had been folded and unfolded many times. Roman. I do not know whether you are alive. I do not know whether you ever loved me. Our son moved for the first time tonight. I wanted to hate you. But for one moment I wished your hand was here. Roman's knees nearly failed. There were dozens of letters. Grace had sent them through Enzo because he claimed he could reach Roman's hidden network. Roman opened another. Noah was born this morning. He has your eyes. I am angry that the first thing I noticed was how much he looked like you. Another. He walked today. He fell twice and refused to cry. He has your stubbornness. Another. He asked me why he does not have a father. I told him that some people become ghosts because they are afraid to come home. Roman pressed the paper against his mouth. Gabriel stood silently nearby. At the bottom of the box was a folder marked with the Valenti seal. It contained the order Enzo had sent to the rival Moretti family 5 years earlier. Eliminate Grace Miller before the pregnancy becomes public. Leave evidence that the order came from Roman Valenti. Roman stared at the page. The truth became clear. Enzo had never intended to protect Grace. He planned to murder her and blame Roman, creating a war between the Valenti loyalists and every remaining ally Roman possessed. Roman's staged death had interrupted the plan. A phone rang inside the box. Gabriel raised his weapon. Roman answered. Enzo's voice filled the warehouse. Did you enjoy the letters? Roman's face became empty. Where are you? You always ask the wrong question. You should ask where your wife is. Roman's blood turned cold. He called the estate. No one answered. Enzo continued. You brought Grace into your home. You placed your remaining soldiers around her. You made it very easy to identify which guards still belong to me. Roman ran toward the exit. If you touch her, there will be no place on this earth deep enough to hide you. Enzo laughed softly. You spent 5 years burning cities because you believed she was safe. Imagine what you will burn when you see her afraid. The call ended. At the estate, Grace was helping Noah decorate a small Christmas tree when the alarms failed. The lights flickered. A guard entered the room. Mrs. Valenti. Roman has ordered an evacuation. Grace did not recognize him. Roman had introduced every guard assigned to Noah. This man was not among them. She reached for Noah. Where is Gabriel? The guard smiled. At the harbor, Grace threw a glass ornament at his face. It shattered against his cheek. She grabbed Noah and ran. The guard caught her before she reached the hallway. Grace fought with everything she had. She drove her elbow into his ribs, kicked his knee, and screamed for help. Another man entered and pressed a cloth over her mouth. The last thing Grace saw was Noah biting the first guard's hand. Roman returned 20 minutes later. 2 loyal guards were dead near the gate. The Christmas tree had fallen across the floor. A single white rose rested where Noah had been sitting. Roman picked it up. His hands were covered in blood from the warehouse. But the flower remained clean. On the wall, Enzo had left a message. The abandoned St. Michael Church. Come alone, or the boy dies before midnight. Gabriel read the message. It is a trap. Roman placed the rose inside his coat. Of course it is. We will surround the church. No. Enzo has men inside the police department and at the harbor. If he sees movement, he will kill them. Gabriel stepped closer. You cannot go alone. Roman looked at him. If I do not return, you will take Noah and Grace out of the country. Gabriel's face tightened. That is not going to happen. Roman handed him the leather case containing Grace's letters. Give these to her. Tell her I read every one. Gabriel took the case. Roman walked toward the vehicle. Boss. Roman stopped. Gabriel lowered his voice. Bring them home. Roman looked at the white rose inside his coat. That is the only reason I am still alive. The Church of Broken Saints, St. Michael Church, stood near the harbor. Abandoned after a fire damaged the roof years earlier. Snow fell through the missing sections of stone. Candles burned along the ruined aisle. Grace sat tied to a chair near the altar. Noah was locked inside the old confessional booth. He could see her through the broken wooden screen. Mom. Grace forced herself to remain calm. Look at me. Noah. Do not look at the men. Keep your eyes on me. Enzo Belandi stood beneath the damaged statue of an angel. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired and elegantly dressed. He had once held Grace's hand while telling her that Roman was dead. Now she understood that grief had been another weapon in his hands. Enzo approached her. Roman always had one weakness. He believed love made him different from his father. Grace looked at him. Roman is different from you. Enzo smiled. Roman has killed more men than I have, and yet you are the one who used a child as bait. His smile disappeared. Grace continued. You are not his enemy because you are stronger. You are his enemy because you spent your life standing behind him and could never survive being unseen. Enzo struck her across the face. Noah screamed. Grace tasted blood. She looked back at Enzo and smiled. That was all the proof I needed. The main church doors opened. Roman entered alone. Snow clung to his black coat. The shoulder beneath his bandage had begun bleeding again. He carried no visible weapon. Enzo turned. The dead king returns to his church. Roman saw Grace's bruised face. Every emotion left his expression. "Where is my son?" Enzo pointed toward the confessional. Noah pressed both hands against the wooden screen. "Dad." Roman's control nearly broke at the word. He forced his eyes back to Enzo. "Release them. First, you will sign control of every Valenti company to me." Enzo gestured toward a table near the altar. Documents waited beside a pen. "You built an empire that survived your death. The ports, casinos, construction companies, shipping routes, and political accounts will belong to me." Roman walked toward the table. Grace stared at him. "Do not do it." Roman did not look away from Enzo. "They are only buildings and names. They are everything your father created." Enzo said, "My father created a prison." Roman picked up the pen. Enzo watched him sign the first document, then the second, then the third. Grace understood what Roman was doing. He was surrendering the power he had spent his life protecting. For her, for Noah. Enzo gathered the documents. "At last," he said. "The great Roman Valenti kneels for a florist." Roman looked at Grace. "I should have knelt 5 years ago." Grace's eyes filled. Enzo motioned toward one of his men. "Bring the boy." The confessional door opened. A guard pulled Noah into the aisle. Roman's entire body tightened. Noah looked frightened but kept his head raised. Enzo placed a gun against the child's shoulder. Roman took one step forward. Enzo cocked the weapon. "Do not." Roman stopped. Grace studied the church. 3 armed men stood near the side entrance. 2 waited behind Roman. Another guarded Noah. A candle burned near the rope around her wrists. Grace slowly moved her hands toward the flame. Enzo lifted the signed documents. 5 years of war for this. A woman who believed you abandoned her. A son who sold flowers because the money you sent became mine. Roman stared at him. "You wanted me to return. I wanted you to suffer." Why? Enzo's face twisted. "Your father promised the empire would become mine. Then you survived the attack that killed him. Every soldier chose you. Every family feared you. I spent 30 years building the Valenti name while you inherited it because of your blood." Roman glanced at Noah. "Blood does not make a family." Noah looked at him. Roman continued. "Loyalty does." Enzo raised the weapon toward Roman. "Then yours is about to be tested." Grace felt the rope weaken against the flame. Smoke rose near her wrists. One of the guards noticed. She pulled hard. The rope broke. Grace grabbed the heavy candle stand and struck the nearest man across the face. Gunfire exploded through the church. Roman moved toward Noah. He pulled a hidden blade from beneath his sleeve and drove it into the arm of the guard holding the boy. The weapon fired into the ceiling. Roman pushed Noah behind a stone column. "Stay down." Grace crawled toward them as bullets struck the altar. Roman shielded her with his body. Enzo ran toward the side corridor. Grace pointed. "He is leaving." Roman looked at Gabriel's tracking device hidden beneath the face of his watch. Then he pressed the button. The side doors burst open. Gabriel and the Valenti soldiers entered. They had approached through the flooded tunnels beneath the church. Beyond the view of Enzo's surveillance, a violent battle consumed the ruined sanctuary. Roman pulled Grace and Noah behind the altar. Gabriel reached them. "Take them to the tunnel." Roman handed Noah to him. Noah grabbed Roman's coat. "You are coming too." Roman looked at his son. "Yes." "Promise." The words struck Roman with almost physical force. He placed one hand against Noah's head. "I promise." Gabriel led Noah toward the tunnel. Grace remained. Roman turned. "Go with him. Not without you." "Grace, you left alone once. I will not let you do it again." A bullet struck the stone beside them. Roman pulled Grace against his chest. They moved toward the side corridor where Enzo had disappeared. The passage led to the old bell tower. Snow blew through broken windows. The harbor lights shimmered below. Enzo stood near the edge of the tower with a gun in his hand. Roman stepped in front of Grace. "It is over." Enzo. Enzo held up a small detonator. "Explosives have been placed beneath the church. Your soldiers, your wife, and your son will disappear with you." Grace saw the wire running from the detonator to Enzo's sleeve. Roman remained calm. "You will die too. At least the Valenti name dies with me." Enzo pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. Confusion crossed his face. Roman removed the white rose from inside his coat. The stem concealed a tiny signal blocker Gabriel had placed there before Roman entered the church. "Noah's flowers saved us," Roman said. Enzo raised his weapon. Roman pushed Grace down as the gun fired. The bullet tore across his side. Roman charged. The two men crashed against the stone railing. Enzo struck Roman's injured shoulder. Roman nearly fell. Grace saw the detonator slide across the floor. She ran toward it. Enzo broke free and aimed at her. Roman caught his wrist. They struggled near the edge. Enzo looked into Roman's face. "You will always be the monster she fears." Roman glanced at Grace. She stood holding the detonator, blood on her cheek. But there was no fear in her eyes. Roman turned back to Enzo. "She knows exactly what I am." He forced the weapon from Enzo's hand, and she still came back for me. Enzo reached for the knife at his waist. Roman caught his arm and drove him against the broken railing. The stone cracked. Enzo lost his balance. Roman caught him by the coat. For several seconds, Enzo hung above the dark church floor. He looked up at Roman. "After everything, you still need me alive to find the remaining accounts." Roman considered him. Then Grace spoke. "Roman," he looked at her, "do not become what he wants you to be." Roman's grip tightened. Enzo smiled, believing Grace had saved him. Roman pulled him back onto the tower floor. Gabriel entered with 2 guards and placed Enzo in restraints. Roman leaned closer to the man who had stolen 5 years from him. "You will live long enough to watch every part of your empire disappear." For the first time, Enzo looked afraid. Roman turned toward Grace. The moment the danger ended, his strength left him. He collapsed. Grace reached him before he struck the floor. "Roman." Blood spread beneath his coat. She pressed both hands against his side. His eyes struggled to remain open. "Noah," he whispered. "He is safe." Roman looked toward the doorway as Gabriel brought Noah into the tower. The child ran to him. "Dad." Roman lifted one trembling hand. Noah placed his smaller hand inside it. Roman looked at Grace. "I came home." Tears moved down her face. "Yes." He closed his eyes. This time, Grace refused to let him disappear. A home built from flowers, Roman survived. The bullet had missed his heart by less than 2 inches. Grace remained beside him through the surgery at a private hospital. Noah slept across 2 chairs with his head in Gabriel's lap. Armed guards filled the hallway. But the most dangerous man in Boston lay unconscious beneath white sheets. Grace held Roman's wedding ring in her palm. Gabriel brought her the leather case from the harbor. Inside were every letter she had written. Roman had placed them in order. The pages were marked where his hands had held them. Grace read until morning. When Roman finally opened his eyes, she was sitting beside him. His voice was weak. Noah sleeping. Enzo alive and under guard. Roman tried to move. Grace placed a hand against his chest. "Stay still." He looked at her fingers. "Are you leaving, Grace?" Understood what he was truly asking? She had every reason to walk away. Roman had chosen for her. He had allowed fear to create 5 years of silence. He had missed the birth of their son, the first steps, the fevers, the birthdays, and the nights when Grace cried alone beside an empty bed. Love did not erase those wounds, but hatred could not erase what Roman had sacrificed either. Grace reached for the chain around his neck and removed the wedding ring. Roman watched her. She placed the ring on the table. His face became still. Then Grace opened her purse. She removed her own ring. She had kept it hidden inside a small cloth pouch for 5 years. Roman stopped breathing. Grace placed the 2 rings beside each other. I cannot return to the woman who waited for you. I would never ask you to. I cannot pretend that love makes what happened acceptable. I know. Grace looked into his eyes. But I also cannot pretend that I stopped loving you. Roman's control broke. He turned his face away. But not before she saw the tears. Grace touched his cheek. This time, he did not stop her. Roman covered her hand with his, I do not deserve another chance. That decision belongs to me. He looked at her. What are you deciding? Grace leaned closer. That Noah deserves to know his father. Roman waited. And that I deserve the truth. Even when it is painful. He nodded. No more secrets. No disappearing. Never again. Grace's eyes narrowed. No making choices for me because you are afraid. Roman hesitated. That one may be more difficult. She almost smiled. Then you will learn. He lifted her hand to his lips. The kiss was soft. Careful. Nothing about Roman had ever been careful except the way he loved her. 3 months later, the criminal empire of Enzo Bellondi collapsed. Records from the harbor exposed judges, officers, accountants, and rival families who had helped him build the conspiracy. Gabriel dismantled the remaining violent operations while Roman transferred the legal businesses into protected trusts. The casinos were sold. The weapons routes were destroyed. The shipping company became legitimate. Roman did not become innocent. There were stains on his hands that no amount of money could remove. But for the first time, he chose to build something instead of ruling through fear. Grace reopened her flower shop. Roman offered to purchase an entire building for her. She refused. He purchased the building beside it instead and claimed he needed an office nearby. Grace knew he was lying. Roman spent most afternoons standing in her shop, pretending to read financial reports while watching Noah arrange roses. Customers were still frightened when they recognized him. Noah was not. He ordered Roman to carry boxes, sweep leaves, and hold ribbons while Grace prepared bouquets. Roman obeyed every command. One spring afternoon, Grace found Roman kneeling beside Noah near the front window. Noah was showing him how to wrap a single white rose. The paper is crooked, Noah said. Roman adjusted it. Like this, still crooked. Roman examined the flower with the seriousness of a man studying a battlefield. Grace leaned against the counter. The most feared man on the eastern coast had been defeated by wrapping paper. Roman looked at her. I have survived worse enemies. Noah shook his head. No, you have not. Grace laughed. Roman stared at her. The sound still affected him as deeply as it had years earlier. He rose and approached her. Noah carried the rose toward the sidewalk, where Gabriel waited beside him. Roman stopped in front of Grace. There is something I need to show you. He led her through the rear door and into the neighboring building. The old interior had been transformed into a glass-roofed garden. Sunlight filled the room. White roses climbed wooden frames. An aisle of flower petals led toward a small stone platform. Their original wedding photograph stood beside 2 candles. Grace looked around. What is this? Roman took both rings from his pocket. 5 years ago. I married you in darkness because I believed secrecy would keep you safe. He lowered himself onto one knee. Grace's heart stopped. Roman Valenti had forced powerful men to kneel before him. He had never willingly knelt before anyone. Now he looked up at Grace without power. Weapons. Or protection. Only truth. I cannot return the years I took from you. I cannot become the man you believed I was before I left. but I can spend every year that remains becoming the man who comes home." Grace's eyes filled with tears. Roman continued, "Marry me again. Not in secret, not because danger forces us together. Choose me while knowing every broken part of me." Grace looked toward the doorway. Noah stood there holding a basket of white roses. Gabriel and the flower shop employees waited behind him. Noah smiled. "You should say yes. He has been practicing that speech for 2 weeks." Roman closed his eyes. Gabriel looked toward the ceiling. Grace laughed through her tears. She held out her hand. "Yes." Roman slid the ring onto her finger. Then Grace took his ring and placed it on his hand. He rose. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. 5 years of grief stood between them. So did a second chance. Grace placed her hands against his face and kissed him. Roman pulled her close. Careful at first. Then, with the desperate devotion of a man who had crossed death to reach her, Noah covered his eyes. The employees applauded. Outside, spring sunlight covered the street where Noah had once sold flowers to buy dinner. 1 year later, Roman stood outside the same Boston restaurant where he had first seen his son. Noah waited beside him with a basket of white roses. This time his coat was warm. This time he was not selling flowers because his mother needed money. The proceeds were being donated to a shelter for single mothers. Grace watched from the flower shop display across the street. She wore a cream dress beneath her coat, and Roman's ring shone on her hand. A customer approached Noah. "How much for one?" Noah smiled. $3. 2 or 5. Roman looked down at him. "You increased the price last week." Noah shrugged. "Demand is high." Roman nodded with approval. A black SUV waited nearby, but the bodyguards kept their distance. Roman no longer wanted his son to believe that love had to look like a prison. Noah handed a rose to an elderly man. Then he selected the most beautiful flower in the basket and gave it to Roman. "This one is for Mom." Roman took the rose. Together, father and son crossed the street. Grace opened the shop door before they reached it. Roman stopped in front of her. "For you." Grace accepted the flower. "Did you pay for it?" Noah answered. "He owes me $3. Roman reached for his wallet. Grace laughed. Roman wrapped one arm around her waist while Noah stepped between them. The city moved around them. Cars passed. Church bells rang in the distance. Sunlight reflected from the windows above. 5 years earlier, Roman had believed love meant disappearing before his darkness could destroy the people he cherished. He had been wrong. Love was not leaving. Love was returning. Love was staying when fear demanded escape. Love was allowing another person to see every scar and trusting that they would decide for themselves whether to remain. Roman looked at Grace and Noah. For the first time in his life, the Mafia Boss did not feel like a king, a weapon, or a ghost. He felt like a husband. He felt like a father. He felt alive. Grace slipped her hand into his. Roman held it tightly as they entered the flower shop together. And this time, he came home to stay.